Welcome everybody, I'm Santiago Nieland and this is The Divine Within, the invisible connection with God. Today we're going to talk about Revelations. We're diving into one of the boldest ideas in spiritual history. Revelation is a living process, not a one-time miracle, but a progressive unfolding of truth across human history. From ancient teachers to Jesus himself and into modern cosmic revelation, we'll explore how divine truth has been revealing in stages, meeting humanity where we are, and nudging us towards where we're going. We're joined by Derek Grimm, media creator, lifelong student of the Urantia book, and founder of the Urantia TLDR. Derek's work blends spiritual depth with modern storytelling, translating big cosmic ideas into accessible media for a new generation. So welcome, Derek. It's a pleasure having you here.
Absolutely. My pleasure to be here with you. Very excited.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. So let's dive in because there's a lot to talk about. And
Sure
let's
is.
start first on what are the Epochal Revelations. So what if human history isn't random, but guided by waves of spiritual insight? In this segment, we'll explore the Epochal Revelations, 5 major moments when higher truth entered the world to expand humanity's understanding of God, the universe, and our place within it. From ancient teachers to Jesus of Nazareth, these revelations weren't about starting religions. They were about raising consciousness one era at a time. So, Derek, can you run us on what are these revelations? I mean, we've heard about revealed religion and evolved religion. So, what's about this topic, which really intrigues me?
Well, I think one of the first things that we have to come to terms with is the idea that civilization on the inhabited worlds, on planets, and not just ours, every planet that's inhabited throughout the whole universe of universes, is meant to be a co-creative effort between divinity and humanity. It's
Okay.
co-creative. And we see that in a lot of these things still survive in our myths and legends. Things went a little bit wrong here. But that's the plan. There is a plan to reveal religion to us as well as for our understanding of God and religion to evolve. And that's the basis for these bestowals on all of the planets.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, now that we're diving into this concept that you're telling me about co-creating relationship, which is something that I like. I mean, a lot of people are saying, I mean, we're just an accident. We're just, floating in this rock throughout the universe, and there's nothing else in this vast universe but just this speck of intelligent life that we are. But really, once we start peeling and diving into not only today, but throughout history, like you said, I mean, different instances throughout time, we see that, it's a progressive, and that's something that I like about what revealed religion is. It's a progressive, and it all depends on the epoch and the times that we are. Of course,
Right.
I mean, now with the knowledge that we have nowadays, we probably couldn't have had the same information revealed to us thousands of years ago. But nowadays, I mean, based on what we have this. But can you tell us a little bit about this co-creative relationship?
Well, I guess it really begins when we as humans achieve a certain um, level of being human. So I guess where it all starts is once we become human, and what it is to be human means that we have um, we're able to worship, and we also
Okay.
have wisdom, and that's something that separates us from our animal cousins, right? And once we achieve this, the ability to connect with spirit, I guess, is another way to say this, and for spirit to connect with us. That's kind of the signal for these bestowals to start happening. And the first bestowal that happens is, like I said, it's the beginning of this co-creative effort between divinity and humanity. And so I don't know how to say this simply, but the universe administration
Mm-hmm.
gives us an administration. And they come to the planet and they settle in, and they, as the legends say, they gift humanity with civilization. They sit down and they teach us how to live. They give us the art of civilization,
Mm-hmm.
and they start moving us on that path of progressing ever so slowly along with our ability at the time. And that's how civilization starts to grow, is co-creative. They are here to help us physically and
And
mentally
that's
and spiritually. Yeah,
And that's really interesting because I think that in every human civilization, and doesn't matter which continent, we always see and hear these stories about these, magical beings, these giants. And suddenly there was maybe something went wrong, and we're going to be talking about this. But tell us about this first revelation. Let's say the first revelation that came to us, like you said, with these administrative officials from heaven, or
right.
not heaven, but from other worlds that came down and started teaching us all of this.
That's right. And that's the key terminology that we get from especially the Sumerian records and legends. Um,
Yeah.
Civilization was bestowed on us by heaven, basically. They came down to give us the civilization. So what we're talking about here is we're talking about a massive spiritual administration, which those of us who were alive at that time could not see. But there's also a component of that administration which we could see, and that's where all of these legends come from. There was actually 100. Well, let's just do it simply. There was 200,
Mm-hmm.
and they basically split up into different departments, if you want to call it
Okay.
that. Different parts of civilization. There was government, there was agriculture, there's metalworking, there's cleanliness, and there was how to deal with wild animals. There was all of these initial parts of civilization that they split into groups to teach us. And they built this huge city, well, huge at the time,
Yeah.
and they set up shop and they started attracting people from neighboring tribes, and they would come to the city and they would learn, and then they would take what they'd learned back to their own tribes and implement them, and that's how the civilization would slowly grow and spread.
Uh,
And
This,
so when you look at the mythology, you've got these, like even something more recent, like the Greek pantheon of gods, right? You've got
yeah.
the god of the sun, you've got god of war, god of wisdom. Um, that's kind of where all that comes from, right?
Yeah. That
It's
that's really interesting. And I mean, like you said, and many times we think of or we see ourselves like we found out how to do things, but really a lot of it was taught. A lot of it we inherited, and these blueprints that came, how I don't remember the time, but really, really ages ago. But we have these blueprints throughout the world, and like you're saying, comparing with the Greek gods, and those were the remnants of, let's say, history that came from these stories, these times, these ancient times, right?
yeah, they're memories of those um, physical beings that came here to bestow civilization on us.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah,
And I know, I mean, and this is something that is mentioned in the Urantia book. This was headed by a prince, a planetary prince. So there was a head of state, let's say,
yeah,
quote
yeah,
unquote,
yeah.
that came here, and he was tasked with the revelation, with this first epochal revelation. But I wanted to get to, I mean, it was all going to plan, but then suddenly something happened. What is it that happened that kind of set us astray in that sense?
Yeah. So, first of all, I think it's important to get some idea of the timeframes involved here. So,
Yeah,
when they first arrived here, approximately 500,000 years ago, which is a long time.
half a million years ago. So
Yeah.
let's put that into context. Yeah,
Yes. Okay. So we're talking basically what we're saying is there is a lot of human history that has been forgotten. And part of what the Urantia book gifts us back is that heritage, which
yeah,
is really profound and amazing. This went along really well according to schedule and according to what was supposed to be happening. for 300,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then Lucifer, who we all know that name,
Yeah.
decided that he was going to rebel against the government and administration of God.
Okay.
And our planetary administrator, his name was Caligastia,
Mm-hmm.
decided he was going to, before it even broke out, he decided he was going to betray our planet to this rebellion.
Okay.
And that's what happened. So when the rebellion broke out, approximately 200,000 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
our planet was betrayed to this rebellion, and the result of that was we were cut off. We were severed from the circuits that connected individual worlds together. We're isolated and quarantined until such time as the whole thing is resolved, and it isn't
And
yet. So,
yeah, and this is interesting because we see all this play out. Not and what I like about this is that in a lot of traditional religions we see that God and Satan, Lucifer, the devil have equal stance. But what really the Urantia book teaches us is that they are not. These are administrators that rebelled. It's more of how we see rebellion in human history, where you have this like a coup d'état. Let's say that way. We had
yeah,
these rebels that wanted to
yeah,
overpower, and one of their major or the Lucifer Manifesto stated that there is no God and that we are free to do whatever we want. Which ding 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 ding. Nowadays we see these false liberties where we say, oh, no, truth is relative, and you can do whatever you want. And that's part of what happened that time ago. It was
yeah,
really setting us off stray or off course, and everything that we see, and even in these myths and all these stories, we always hear about this cataclysm. We hear about everything kind of, there was something that happened, and then we had to start all over. So I see that this is what your ancient book points out throughout all the civilizations. What they're talking about is this Lucifer manifesto, this Lucifer rebellion that started all this long ago, that has us still in quarantine and still trying to resolve what's happening.
exactly. Yeah. I think what you were saying in terms of the scope of it, um, as you were saying, we have this idea that good and evil are equal forces contesting with each other all the time, and Earth is the arena of all of that.
Yeah.
And that's just not how it is. I mean, it would be, in comparison, we're talking about the whole solar system is God, just, to
Yeah.
keep it sort of small and comparable,
To scale, let's
and
say.
to scale, yeah. And what Lucifer did and his scope would be more like a neighborhood in a small town compared
Okay.
to the solar system. That's kind of
Okay.
what
Yeah.
we're talking about.
I like that. I
It's
like that example. It's pretty
it's
pretty
it's
graphic.
yeah, in the whole scope of God and the reality of the universe, it's not equal good versus evil. It's just not.
Exactly.
It's yeah,
And that's what I like about Star Wars is that it tells us, there's always the battle between the dark side and the bright side, right? But
right,
the forces, regardless, it encompasses everything. So that's why I
right,
like so much. I mean, Star Wars really gives us that perspective of God, and His rule is above everything, above evil, above the choices that we make. But it's everything is within God. So I like
right.
this, and it gives me a lot of peace to think that it's not that God is trying to defeat the devil. He can't. I mean, the devil cannot get to the stance
It's
of God. He's always.
insignificant. Yeah,
Exactly, exactly.
yeah,
So in the end, you got it's within you. It's in your hands, the choice to do evil or to err. I mean, because we all err. We're fallible. We're
yeah,
imperfect beings, and that's part of the process and how we evolved as humans. But it's in our choice to keep on doing those errors, and then sinning, and eventually getting to
yeah,
iniquity. Where it's just what happened in the Lucifer rebellion, just going
yeah,
against the will of God, right?
yeah. So I think the other side of that, though, the scale discussion, is that from the cosmological viewpoint, it's insignificant, right?
Yeah.
But we happen to be in that small little neighborhood on the planet in the solar system. So for us, it's like really significant, and it's devastating
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
not be part of our universal family and be able to have these communications and to know to we still, well, though we don't know for certain, scientifically and all that, that the universe is inhabited. I mean, we know it is, but you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
we just
there's not a smoking gun or
there's
the
yeah,
evidence, the fossil there
yeah,
that you can say, okay, it is.
concrete proof, right? So there's
Exactly,
there's
exactly.
still that unknowing sort of ness of it all, and this idea
Yeah,
of being alone, and it's tough. It's tough
it
going it
is.
alone, even personally, as a group going it alone, or even as a planet going it alone. It's a tough thing. And
Definitely.
yeah, so that's what we're going through right now. But I also think we have to understand that even though we are quarantined, um, we're not abandoned.
Exactly.
They're trying to work with us and help us as best they can under the circumstances until things are resolved. So we're not
Exactly.
alone.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
let's, following these revelations, these epochal revelations,
Yeah.
we just talked about the first one, which is that was presented when the prince came to this planet. Then we have a part, or there's, which I really like and really kind of settles the issue about were we born out of Adam and Eve, or were we evolved from chimpanzees, from apes? But like you're saying, we started out, and then the human, as designed in this planet, got to its stage that it became spiritually, like you said, wisdom and worship came into being, and that differentiated us from the rest of the animals. And we started to have this spiritual receptivity and started to communicate spiritually with all these forces. But it gets to a point where we have what we call the material uplifters, the material sons and daughters, which are Adam and Eve, and they come to uplift and bring more of these genes, more of this cosmic blueprint that we have in order to have a more spiritual connection with other spiritual beings, including God. So tell us a little bit about the second revelation, which was Adam and Eve.
Yeah. So they would be the second of the bestowals of divine help, and co-creative assistance in our evolutionary progress, right? So they have a couple of missions. One is that they're to continue on from what the original planetary administration has accomplished to that point, and that
Mm-hmm.
the planetary administration, they don't leave or anything. They continue on. This is just blowing up the balloon bigger to
Kind
encompass
of
more, right?
compounds. It's
Right,
the second level, third
right.
level. Yeah,
Additional, right?
yeah.
Yeah. But as you said, another one of their main functions is to biologically uplift humanity.
Okay.
And the way that's done is basically over a long, long period of time, like probably like 25, 30,000 years. Um, their job is to skillfully and strategically inject their DNA into the human gene pool.
Okay.
I think that's the most succinct way to say that without getting into the reeds. Um, so their genetics are, I hesitate to say alien, but they're not completely, they're divine. They're
Yeah.
divine genetics. That's the best way to say it. And there's certain things within those genetics that will uplift the human gene pool. And the plan, on our planet
Mm-hmm.
was, well, one of some of the benefits of that is it makes us a lot more resistant to disease. Um, it usually generates towards the end of the 20-30,000 years. There's usually a huge renaissance of music and spirituality and science and exploration. It's like the
All these
golden age. All
higher
this,
things
yeah,
tools and attributes that we can use, right?
that's right. And that's only just happened here. So Adam and Eve actually came here about 30, let's just say 38,000 years ago. So, things are pretty behind. But that's generally what the effect of having their genes injected into our gene pool to uplift it all. There's enormous benefit, and there's an enormous spiritual benefit as well. It really expands our spiritual capacities and everything too.
Yeah, I
So
like that.
that's what they came for. Yeah.
It's like they bring the connectors. Let's say that we were in the, I think of computers. You had the typical, from the 60s, 70s connections, and now we have these Wi-Fi connections, and it's kind
Yeah.
of getting that Wi-Fi into our genes and into our existence, and to be able to communicate with the divine within, with that fragment of God inside of us, and with all the different spiritual agencies around us.
It's kind of like supercharging everything, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I think we're gonna. I mean, the story of Adam and Eve is really interesting, and I don't want. I mean, we can do a whole podcast, and maybe that's what we're gonna do. Talk about Adam and Eve in a special episode, because the default of Adam and Eve is really interesting, and there's a lot of I
It's
always see the
heartbreaking.
the mythical archetypes that really
Yeah.
kind of tell us a little bit of what happened. Because when I was a kid, I never really thought it's really because they ate this apple. There's a lot of stories in there. There's more drama than we can imagine in that story. So let's leave that for later. And what
Okay.
we're going to do now is we're gonna end this segment right here. And in the
Sure.
next segment, we're going to be talking about the latter revelations that came, which are really interesting, and that kind of set
Oh
the
yeah.
basis of our modern religions, or the Judeo-Christian religions. So stay
Yeah.
tuned for the next episode.
Can't wait.
Now we come to the third and fourth revelation. So after Adam and Eve, they defaulted. I mean, it wasn't that they consciously betrayed, like maybe Caligastia in the first, with the first revelation, and kind of cut that off. These guys did their best. They erred because they are not from paradise. They are still,
Yeah.
evolution. They're evolving in themselves. So they defaulted. They kind of added to this confusion that we have in our world. But then we were sent a special teacher. Who is that, and what is the third revelation?
Yeah. So I guess just to back up just a touch,
Yeah.
um, the main, I don't want to say the main, but like a huge result of Adam and Eve's default is that it severed the physical connection of this divine cooperation
Okay.
of building civilization. So until Adam and Eve, there had always been physical manifestation of the divine administration and government. And when I say physical manifestation, I'm talking about people.
Yeah.
So in the first dispensation with Caligastia and the 200, those were the 200 were physical people,
Yeah.
and then Adam and Eve, physical people, and their children were physical people.
Yeah.
Adam and Eve had a component in their genetics and their makeup that allowed them to be, um, what's the word? Not eternal, but they could live here for thousands and tens of thousands of years,
Okay.
immortal.
Okay.
Okay. Um, but their default severed that ability to take advantage of that mechanism within their bodies. And
Okay.
they lost this ability to be immortal, which is the mechanism of their default, because their their function required them to actually be present on the planet.
Okay. Yeah.
And because they died, they weren't able to direct to skillfully and strategically direct the injection of this DNA into the human gene pool. And they also
Mm-hmm.
weren't able to preside over this gradual uplifting of civilization as well, because there was things that they were supposed to do in that regard as well, right? Um,
Yeah.
so that severed it, and that was again absolutely devastating for us.
Yeah.
And at about the time that they defaulted, they got a message from Jesus, um, saying, I know in your hearts that you didn't rebel against me. You just made a mistake. I will
Mm-hmm.
see you when I come to your planet, to Urantia, to Earth.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? Right? And so there was always this, the deliverer is going to come from that
That's where the
time,
stories come
right?
of the Messiah,
That's
of the deliverer, right?
Yes, that it started there, and that through the whole 35,000 all the way down to let's say 3000 BC, you have this thread of someone's coming, someone's coming, someone's coming. But by about 3000 BC, just everything, it's just we're talking about so great spans of time that all of this really just disappeared. All of this work of building civilization up that was supposed to be having it just collapsed. There was nothing, and the whole religious and spiritual ideas that people had really disintegrated as well.
Okay.
And the individual that we know as Melchizedek
Mm-hmm.
knew that Jesus was coming, and he had a pretty good idea of when, and he thought he's going to have nothing to work with when he gets here. So
Yeah.
he did what is called an emergency bestowal. This is not
Okay.
part of the usual plan. He bestowed himself on Earth in an emergency capacity so that he could like get some of these ideas in place and get things going towards some sort of reception for Jesus when he got here.
Okay.
And that's the whole reason behind Melchizedek coming. He arrived here about, I think it's about 1900 BC or so. And it's the same Melchizedek that we hear about with Abraham and everything. So
Which is this is I like this, and now it kind of we start seeing. I mean, we've been hearing about, we're talking about Adam and Eve and these the 200 that came with the prince. I mean, in these instances in our religion, in our history, we see that. But I want you to explain what are Melchizedek's, and I want you to tell us what impact he had on Abraham, because he was really what from where Abraham took all of his information, and that really started Judaism and what we now know. So tell us, what is a Melchizedek and what happened all this time ago with Abraham?
okay, that's a big order.
I know.
So within the hierarchy of divine beings, let's just say
Hmm.
that, there are many different orders, I guess. And
Yeah,
the Melchizedek order of beings, they have a lot of things that they can and do and accomplish within our local area of the universe, right?
yeah.
Um, they're most well known as the educators. And
Okay,
so
the
as we
teachers.
yeah, they're teachers.
Okay,
That's what they're most well known as. And that is his primary function when he was here. So the Melchizedek who came here is actually, his name is Macaventa Melchizedek. There's many.
okay,
Melchizedek is the order of being,
yeah,
and his name is Macaventa.
okay,
And um, they often do, in cases of emergencies, bestow themselves on planets and things like that. That's part of their function, and that's what happened here. So he is a relatively higher order of being in our local area of the universe. Is probably, he's a divinely created being.
Okay.
So I guess it would be appropriate to call him a son of God.
Okay.
Not the son of God, a son of God, right? There's a huge
Exactly.
difference there. Um, and what was the rest of your question? Sorry?
How does
Yeah.
that relate to Abraham? Because
Abraham, right? Yeah.
that's where
So,
really the basis of the Judeo-Christians started. All this
right.
long time ago.
Yeah. So the thing about Abraham is that, he came over from Mesopotamia and he had a lot of ambitions, and he's settled in the area of where Melchizedek was, which was Salem at the time, which is Jerusalem now.
Hmm.
And he sort of set up camp, and he knew about Melchizedek, and he wanted to basically carve himself out a little bit of an empire.
Okay.
And he had relatives down in Egypt, and he was well connected, and he was well respected, and he was quite a military guy. And it took a lot for Abraham, or for Melchizedek, to convince Abraham that he should be more interested in a spiritual kingdom than this little military kingdom that he was trying to carve out. And so Melchizedek had set up a school in
Okay.
Salem, and he sent missionaries out all over Asia and Europe
Okay.
eventually, and this is a little bit later. Um, but Abraham came and was convinced and learned from Melchizedek. And that's where we get the Abrahamic religions from, is from
Okay.
Abraham sort of giving up this idea of carving himself out and establishing himself as a military king.
Okay.
And so the most profound thing with that relationship is this covenant that Melchizedek made with Abraham, which
Okay.
basically said that God will do absolutely everything, and all we have to do is believe,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, that's a
That's the
covenant with
that's the
God and
covenant.
Abraham that the
Yes,
Jews that's
right,
where Judaism really started. That's that
exactly. Yeah,
agreement. Yeah, that
yeah.
covenant.
And that's a specific covenant for our planet, because on most planets there's a lot more required.
Okay.
But on our planet, because it's pretty messed up and
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff we don't know that most planets do know at this point in time.
In their evolution, in
That's
their particular
in there.
evolution, right?
Exactly, right? Um, that's the covenant that was made with us for our planet back in the days of Melchizedek. And that's all we have to do. We just have to believe in what we're being told by these sons of God who are coming to our planet
I
and
like that.
revealing God to us.
I like that. I like that.
It's pretty straightforward when
Yeah,
you boil it down to that, right? So,
exactly.
yeah.
And like we were saying, I think we're gonna have to do podcasts on each of these
Oh,
revelations
yeah.
just to dive into because there's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff. But what I like about this, and like we were saying, that revelations compound. It's not that
Yeah.
one is substituting the other, but it's really compounding. And
Right.
I think with Abraham and Melchizedek, we had this covenant, and that's where we have all the Old Testament, and where we have Moses, and there's a very interesting story about Moses, and recently there's been a lot of shows, and all the trials and tribulations that the Israeli nation had to go through, because it was pure, I don't want to say purging, but it was purifying. Let's say that
Yeah.
it's throughout all these different challenges that they had to go through the desert, and get away from Egypt and all that. But we always see up to this point in history that we have a wrathful God. We have a God that has to, he's not, I don't want to say that he's not kind, but he's more of, okay, we have to get structure. We have to get justice. We have to, we have to organize this because it's a mess. So
Right.
we've kind of feared God. And then we have one of the revelations that well, if not the best revelation, or the one that we are most dear to, which is the one that Jesus brought, which is the fourth
Right.
revelation, and that is changing that nature of how we saw God as this wrathful and vengeful entity into a loving Father. He really revealed that nature of God, and really we became sons of God when Jesus came and taught us all this. So, and I
Right.
know that Jesus, I mean, Jesus is it's his own topic, but tell us a little bit more about this fourth revelation.
Yeah, that's extraordinary. We could spend like a whole week talking about this, but um like you said, each six, like studying these bestowals and these revelations also shows us basically the evolution of our understanding of God
Yeah,
rather
yeah,
than any change in God who is actually changeless, right?
yeah,
It basically illustrates how we understand him. And
yeah,
so as young children, you see a stern father sometimes, right? And you don't
yeah,
understand that.
yeah,
But as you grow up, you realize, well, actually, your father isn't probably as stern as you think, and he actually really loves you, and that's the center of it all, right? And
yeah.
that's really what's showing as we progress in our understanding of God. And it was a really watershed change in our
Hmm.
understanding of God and his nature when Jesus came.
Okay.
And if we want to tie that in with the preparation that Melchizedek made in terms of this covenant,
Hmm.
the covenant that Melchizedek made is that all you have to do is believe and God will do everything. When Jesus came, he said, well, yes, um, belief will get you in the door. But if you want to stay in, you
Yeah.
need to exercise that belief and turn it into faith,
Oh, I love that.
active faith, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so again, we have this building on previous things that have been said and greater understanding. The balloon kept getting inflated more and more and more, and we were able to encompass more and more of reality and understand it better, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So the revelation that Jesus gave us of the Father,
Yeah.
um, it changed everything,
Yeah.
didn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. That really sets the tone. And everybody says, "Oh, it's the gospel." But really, when you define the gospel, it's really the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. Once we understand that, understand that we're brothers and that we have one father. And I had an experience, and we'll probably talk about this later, but I was saved by that. I was in a situation where I had to recognize my brother. And once I saw that, I understood that my brother would only do right for me and would love me and wouldn't take me into harm's way. My true brother, I understood, and that was an interesting situation. But that's like a mathematical conclusion where you say, okay, if we're brothers, then therefore we're coming from the same father, and that when we recognize ourselves as brothers, we kind of validate the existence of our heavenly Father, right?
That's right. And that's our first step. Once we recognize that among ourselves,
Yeah,
and then recognize that among groups of us, and then recognize that on a whole planetary scale, then it's our turn to start recognizing that on an interplanetary scale.
yeah,
We are all sons of God, no matter where we live, who we are. We're all brothers under and sisters under the fatherhood of God, no matter where we are, no matter what planet we're on. I mean, we're at the point now where we have to start thinking like that.
yeah. And it doesn't matter how many defaults or rebellions, or the plan of God is keeps on moving. And even though we have these instances where maybe nothing, or not all things are going to plan, eventually it'll fix. And that's like that's very comforting for me, to say. I mean, that's there's interaction in the personal level that you have to do. I mean, there's that interaction with God that you have to have, and that personal relationship with God. But as you bring that love, and you start having that brotherly love and that brotherly affection and that brotherly altruism with the rest of our brethren, is really when we start bringing heaven on earth, right?
And that's the goal. That's the goal, right? I
Exactly.
mean, our goal as the Father has commanded is be you perfect even as I am perfect. And
Yeah.
that applies to us individually as people, and it applies to us as a civilization, a
Yeah.
planetary civilization.
Yeah.
That is our goal,
Awesome.
heaven on earth. And
Awesome. Well,
it's co-creative, right? It's a
and, the-
co-creative effort.
and that's what I like, and I mean that's another topic that we can discuss a lot about the concept of the supreme. You know that we're all
Yeah,
this aggregate, that we're contributing and that we're co-creating in this relationship with God and with all the different celestial and local agencies in improving and getting being perfect as God is perfect as He commanded. You know that's His
that's
will.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. So now we get to this point. We've seen that these four revelations really were brought by a group of individuals or an individual, in the case of Jesus and Melchizedek. But now we are in these modern times with all these defaults and rebellions and the aggregate of different things that have come. Uh, and we get to this point where the celestial agency said, you know what, we cannot reveal, the next revelation cannot be the typical one that we've been doing with a person revealing, because what happens there, we start worshiping that messenger. In Jesus's case, I mean, that's a different, but the really the important thing is in the message, in the content. So they presented us with what we now know is the conclusion of all this is the Urantia book, but what started as the Urantia papers. And it's a
Yeah.
very interesting, I mean, I don't want to go into the detail of how, I mean, because there's a lot, but just to briefly
Yeah.
kind of tell us what happened basically 100 years ago, what happened in the 1950s, and where we're at today with this revelation, which is the fifth epochal revelation.
Okay. So to tie it in with the bigger story,
Yeah.
we had this emergency bestowal of Melchizedek
Hmm.
in order to prepare for the coming of Jesus. And it's been 2,000 years since Jesus's bestowal ended, I guess you could say.
Hmm.
Um, this is my personal opinion. I think
Yeah.
I have to say that, but I believe that the Urantia book is another emergency bestowal. I don't think it's an actual bestowal because if you look at all of the others, they are associated with, as you said, an individual.
Oh, it is, and they tell
Yeah,
us that they had to get approval and said, okay,
yeah,
these guys need something, and this is
yeah.
only for our planet. It is, yeah,
That's right. And so what we're looking at is basically a presentation of clarification
okay,
is what it is. So we've had 2,000 years of basically the post bestowal era of
mm-hmm,
Jesus. And there's some really good content about this. The how Christianity has changed and evolved into what it is now compared to what it was and what it was intended
mm-hmm,
when Jesus was here.
yeah,
And so I think and plus with all our massive technological progress, we're getting to the point where we need a lot more cosmological information than we actually have right now, which is
yeah,
spiritual and all that kind of stuff. Um, so I think they got to the point where they said, okay, we need to fill in some blanks here,
yeah,
and we need to clarify some stuff that people are getting wrong.
yeah,
And the way in which they decided to do that was a formal document. And
yeah,
the reason that I think they did that is because the early 20th century basically saw it the first time on our planet that literacy was at the point where pretty much anybody on the planet could could read,
Yeah.
right? We're at that point
Yeah.
now where we have getting very close to full literacy on our planet.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of the 20th century, the early 1900s, they started this process. We're talking about the celestial beings and orders, angels, and all kinds of different orders of beings who are involved or going to be involved in this process of making this formal document.
Yeah.
And they started contacting different groups of people, and one of the groups was in Chicago, and they went through this whole process of connecting contacts and things like that. Questions were asked and answered. A group was formed. This is in Chicago now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and a whole process was basically laid out where a group would gather, mostly weekly, and questions would be asked
But
about the
okay,
nature of God. And yeah,
were they asking? I mean, were there spiritual beings there, and or how was this process? Just to clarify, I mean, and we'll
well,
probably
I
talk
think
about it later.
what it originally focused on was what is referred to as a sleeping subject, and it was this guy. He's
We
a
don't know his
man.
name, and we don't know who
Nobody
he
knows
is.
who he is. He's deliberately. I don't want to say hidden, but they don't want the Urantia papers, this formal document, to be associated with any particular one person,
Yeah.
in the way that Christianity is associated with Paul, for example, right?
Yeah.
So we have the sleeping subject, and this is the person who these communications were coming through, and
Yeah. It was
he
like a,
didn't
kind of
really.
the microphone. I mean, not the mic, the speaker. The connection. Just
He's a
the
conduit,
entry
right?
point, the conduit.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and the reason is because we don't have that physical connection or manifestation of divinity on the planet anymore, and
Yeah.
so they had to have some way to communicate, and this is how it started, through this guy. And I think there was some writing that happened. There was a lot of speaking that happened. But the result was that there was, as I was saying, this group was formed, and
Mm-hmm.
it became a lot more formal, where they would ask these questions, and the sleeping subject would be the conduit for the answers to come through, and then um, the answers would be read out, and then more questions would be asked, and it would be refined. And this whole process went on for 25, 30 years,
Yeah.
and refined and refined and refined. There's four sections to the Urantia book, right? And the
Yeah.
first three sections were basically came into being in this way. The fourth section is different. The fourth section is the story of Jesus on earth, and it's the most profound recounting of his time here that has ever existed on the planet. It's most of the books in the Bible are about, what is it, 70 pages long?
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
700 pages long, and it
10
goes through
times.
his life year by year, and it gives dates. It's extraordinary.
Yeah.
Anyway, that actually was manifested somehow.
Yeah.
That didn't come through the sleeping subject. That was done by a specific group of celestial beings who were actually here at the time, and used a whole bunch of existing records and their memory,
Yeah.
and they
They were
they
there. They're
provided that.
telling their account, right?
That's right. And that's the incredible part about a lot of what's in especially the historical parts of the Urantia book, is that we're getting it from the people who were actually there. Like the Adam and Eve papers, for example, were written by the voice in the garden.
Yeah.
That's extraordinary.
Yeah.
Like, it's an
Yeah.
eyewitness account.
Yeah. 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 It's
Yeah.
not. It's not like third or fourth or fifth accounts of what happened, but the source. And I really like that. So You were saying, and I love this. We get to a point where we compile and we have now, and like you're saying, the fourth part was a gift to us. You know, it was like, okay,
Yeah,
we're not only setting the record straight about your history, about the universal history, about God, but now we're gonna set the record straight about Jesus.
yeah,
And they presented us with this.
yeah.
And what happened in afterwards, after this contact commission gathered all these documents?
So, it was fairly complete by about 1934, 1935, and that's where a lot of the dates are measured from. So when they say Adam and Eve came 37,743 years ago, or whatever exactly it is, they're measuring from that date, 1934.
Yeah. Right
But
before World War II. I mean, right
that's the
before the
problem, right?
biggest devastation was going to happen
That's the
in our
problem.
world. Yeah,
Yeah. So what happened was the war was basically firing up and they delayed publication of it until after the war was over. And so it was actually published in a single volume as it is now in 1955.
okay.
And that's the Urantia book, 1955. It's been around, and they
And,
started sending it out to people, and um, it. I think it's amazing how many closet readers there are.
yeah, that we don't know.
I
That people would be surprised of,
Yeah,
famous people that are really Rancher book readers that they're not publicly express it, right?
that's right. And you don't have to be a public facing Urantia book reader to to get what you need from it, right?
Which
Um,
is its teachings. Yeah, the way to live
exactly.
and relate to. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is interesting. So we have the publication 1955, and up to today, we've had many translations. I mean, it's been
Yes.
translated into
Yeah.
Hebrew, Chinese now,
Yeah.
and now we're moving into more of the digital era, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But just
Yeah.
to close off on what happened. Just a little bit of histories from the 80s and 90s. As always, there was a dispute within the
Yep.
groups and said, okay, we want to publish this. And then another group wanted to publish it. And there was even a court, I think it was a Supreme Court settlement, or not a settlement, but verdict that it says, okay, since everybody's saying that this isn't, I mean, the authors are celestial, there's no human author, then this is public and everybody can go. If you go right now and put urantiabook.com, you can go straight and read it off online. You can buy
Right.
it. You can check our links. We have links to all of this. So this is
Yeah.
public. This is
Yeah.
really
It's public.
interesting. It's
Yeah.
such a big and important document. It's public. It's for the
Yeah.
world.
As
So
it
that
rightly
brings
should be. Yes.
it is. It is.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So let's talk about right now about your project and what we're doing at the Center for Unity, in which and how I see the evolution of this revelation. I mean, we've had it basically, as we're saying, you started about 100 years ago that these documents started to come, and we're now at a time where basically we're it's not the same as maybe 50 years ago, 40 years ago, where people
No,
would
it's
read
not.
books. Now
Yeah.
it's digital. Now
Yeah.
you don't go to a class and you sit down and have a lecture. You go in one-on-one. You go into digital videos, courses, and everything. And suddenly, and I see this within the readers, I've been reading the book for 25 years, started in 2000. And I see, especially in recent years, towards more or less when the pandemic started, a lot of the readers, and we've talked about this, we're now presenting these teachings and in this information in different manners. We now have discoverjesus.com. We have Urantia Book Teacher, Urantia Book Tutor, and you have Too Long Didn't Read. Can you tell us a little bit of what you're doing and what you see in this next phase of the revelation?
Yeah. I think one of the core things that I think is really important to remember is that towards the end of the book, and I'm going to have to paraphrase this, it talks about the need for each generation to have to rediscover Jesus and reinterpret him
Mm,
for themselves. And I think for this generation, um, a lot of rediscovering and reinterpreting him is obviously going to be a lot different than it was in the 1950s and 1960s. The
yeah.
the things that were going on back then, people would sit there and read.
Yeah. By the
Even
fireside.
when exactly when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, there's nothing I liked more than just to like hide somewhere and read all day.
Yeah,
And that's probably why I grabbed a book that thick and just devoured it like
yeah,
without barely stopping, right?
yeah,
Um, I don't think a lot of people these days will do that.
yeah,
And I think, you go onto the internet, which is where most people go to get their information and everything these days. And you talk about articles, you say, "Oh, did you read this? Did you see this?" And the first thing people write, if it's more than 300 or 400 words, is "too long, didn't read."
yeah,
And the acronym is TLDR. And I
yeah,
think that really encapsulates how the current generation approaches reading anything longer than, say, 500, 1,000 words, really. They just don't have time. They don't want to.
yeah,
They would rather get that information differently.
yeah,
And the way that a lot of people are getting it these days is video.
yeah.
And so Urantia TLDR um, is basically designed so that people get the information that's in the book, which is the most important thing,
Yeah.
to get that vision of reality that the Urantia book is sharing with us and revealing to us. They have to get it and at least see it, right? I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying that you have to believe it or you have to not I'm not preaching or anything like that. You have to believe,
No,
but
no, no.
at least expose people to the ideas and the vision that is in that book. And I
Yeah.
think at least my solution to this is to make this Urantia TLDR streaming. It's a 5 season streaming series, broadcast quality series, right? There's 5 seasons, and it basically breaks down that whole vision that's in the book.
Which, by the way, you can all find here in our links. Everything that
Yeah,
Derica has been working on in TLDR is here in the links. So you were
thank you.
saying?
Yeah. So, we're just starting on the project. So, I mean, those 5 seasons aren't there yet, but we have a pilot episode done and we're in pre production on season 1.
Awesome.
So it's a work in progress and it's going to
Yeah.
take a while, but we're dedicated to getting it done because we think it's really important.
Yeah.
So I get the irony, especially when we're calling it TLDR, of it being 5 seasons long.
Yeah. But it's
But
not reading, it's watching. So it's
it's
you can
watching.
get around it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So you kind of need that much in terms of seasons. There's approximately 6 episodes in each season. You need that much to share a vision this big and this complex. And
Yeah.
it is the biggest and most complex and comprehensive and awe-inspiring vision of God's creation that we have ever had on this planet, as it should be, because it's the balloon every revelation it gets bigger and bigger, right? So
We're
it
now in the
should be the
fifth story.
biggest.
We're in the let's
Yeah,
say in the penthouse right now.
that's
We're
right.
getting to
That's
the
right.
top of that. Yeah,
Yeah. But there's more to come. There's more
there's
to
more to
come,
come.
right?
Exactly, it's never
Yeah.
ending, and that's the beauty about the universe and the will of God. It's always evolving, always in this forward march. And yeah, I personally, when I started, I'm going to tell this how I got to understand or know the Urantia book. And back in 1999, I was in a sacred geometry workshop. I was 19 at the time, and it was a very intensive workshop. And we were encouraged to bring thoughts, and we had like a meditation time, and sharing time. And this guy read one of the quotes. Quoted the Urantia book, and it was the first time I heard something so impactful in my life, so full of truth, so full of love, but at the same time so commanding. It was there was something in me that said, this didn't come from a human mind.
Yeah.
That was my first glance, and I asked, "Where's this from?" And he said, "What's from
Yeah.
the Urantia book?" And I was fortunate enough that the lady that was giving us the workshop had a copy, and this was in Mexico, and she had the copy in Spanish, and she got the book and
Oh,
gave it to me. I opened it and I said, what is this? And this was October 1999. So by that December, I asked Santa Claus I had vacation in the US and I went to the US and I had Santa Claus. I asked him for the Urantia book. So he gave that to me in Christmas and started reading the 1st of January, 2000. So I
Wow.
have the actual, the turn of the millennium. That's when I started. And I think everybody that is a UB reader, Urantia book reader, you go in as a skeptic, right? You go in and
Yeah.
it's like, oh, what's this all about? Oh, but you get to a point where you read it and boom, you see and you realize that this is the real stuff. So
Yeah.
I don't know when was that for you, but everybody has a moment where and yesterday I actually was we're going to have a podcast with him, with Javier Martinez here in Spain. And he said, he's a scientist. And he said, the first time I read that light has weight, which was something that wasn't really even scientifically understood back then. And when he read that as a scientist, boom, his mind changed.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone has that like moment, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Mine
Exactly.
is I was in university at the time. This is 1991. And a friend of mine that I had grown up with, he was a little bit older than me, so he was a bit of a mentor.
Yeah.
And he showed up in my university town. He was starting university a year later than I am as a mature student. And we would spend a lot of time talking about spiritual stuff because we had met through the church. And we were talking one night, and he says to me, "I got a book you should read."
Uh-huh.
I'm like, "Okay," because it was my job to read. I was a university student.
Yeah.
That's what I
That's
did. I
what you
read
do.
and read and read and read, and I loved it, right? Um, so I said, "Yeah, okay, I'm game. I'll read anything you got. Who wrote it?" And he looked at me really mysteriously, and he said, "Angels." And I'm like, "What?"
Yeah.
I said, "Okay, yeah, well, I'll read it."
Yeah.
And
Cuckoo. Yeah. Let's see
yeah,
what's this all about.
so
Yeah.
he lent me his copy. I took it home. I opened it up, and the forward, I started right from the beginning, which, a lot of people suggest maybe you don't. But I can't remember what number paragraph it is, 4 or 5, but it starts "Your World, Your Rancha." And then it
Yeah.
just basically outlines exactly who and where we are in the universe. And I just couldn't put it down after that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
sucked me in. I was reading that book like somebody who hadn't had a drink of water for about a week.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I read it straight through in 3.5 days.
Really? Sure. It took me 4 years, actually.
Yeah,
It doesn't, because
yeah.
and that's something that I always say. You don't find the book finds you. So
I agree
that's
100%. Yeah, it's when the student is ready, the teacher appears. They say that a
exactly,
lot in Japanese martial arts and stuff.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
and I think it applies outside of that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, Derek, it's been really, really a joy to have this conversation with you about the revelation. And I mean, this is just the beginning of a lot of the conversations that we're going to have, because there's a lot to take out. And
yeah,
I want to thank you for participating. I mean, we have your links here that people can check. And I want to thank all our watchers that are here. Like I always say, if you like it, subscribe, and not only share it, but really tell people. It's
yeah.
better that you can tell them with your own words. I mean, these guys there, kind of moved me in such a way, and maybe you're contributing to their spiritual uplifting. So remember
Hmm,
to share. Remember to love your fellow men, fellow
that's right.
brothers,
That's the message. That's
that's
the
the
basic
message in the
message
end.
right there. Yeah,
That's it. So
yeah.
I'm Santiago Neeland. This is the Divine Within. Take care and carpe diem. On the Divine Within podcast, we'll share real conversations to help you find a personal connection with God. My goal is to support your faith, growth, and journey toward discovering the divine within yourself. Join us to deepen your faith and spiritual journey.